The Grand Ballroom at the Riverside Country Club in Connecticut was alive with celebration. Michael Davis watched his younger brother Tommy spin his new bride Jessica across the dance floor, their faces glowing with happiness. The DJ played classic wedding songs, while guests of all ages filled the polished hardwood floor. Michael adjusted his navy blue suit and smiled, raising his champagne glass, as his wife Emma approached from the ladies' room. At 32, Emma was stunning in her emerald green dress, her dark hair elegantly styled, but something in her expression made Michael's smile fade. "Having fun?" he asked, though he could tell she wasn't. Emma's green eyes darted around the room nervously. "Michael, we need to leave now." "Leave? The party just started. Tommy's about to give his speech and—" "Now, Michael." Her voice was sharp, urgent. She grabbed his arm with surprising force. "We need to go right now." Michael looked at his wife of 5 years, confused. Emma was usually the social butterfly at events like this, charming everyone with her wit and grace. She'd been looking forward to Tommy's wedding for months. "Emma, what's wrong? You're scaring me. Please, just trust me. Get your jacket, tell your parents we're not feeling well, and let's go." The urgency in her voice was unlike anything he'd heard before. Around them, his extended family laughed and danced, completely unaware of the tension building between them. His cousin Danny was attempting to break dance to the amusement of the older relatives, while his Aunt Margaret was already crying happy tears into her handkerchief. "Is this about work? Did something happen with the gallery?" Michael asked. Emma managed a small art gallery in downtown Hartford, and she'd been dealing with some difficult clients lately. "No, it's not about work." Emma's hands were trembling now. "Michael, I'm begging you, we have to leave." Before Michael could respond, the sound of sirens cut through the music. Half the wedding party turned toward the large windows overlooking the parking lot, where red and blue lights were flashing against the evening sky. "Oh my God," Emma whispered, her face going pale. 3 police cars and 2 unmarked sedans pulled into the country club's circular driveway. Michael watched in shock as officers emerged from the vehicles, some in uniform, others in suits. They moved with purpose toward the main entrance. "Emma, what the hell is going on?" The music stopped abruptly. The DJ, a young man with bleached hair, looked confused as he watched the scene unfold through the windows. Guests began murmuring, craning their necks to see what was happening. Tommy approached them, his face flushed from dancing. "Mike, what's with all the cops? Did someone call in a noise complaint?" Before Michael could answer, the ballroom doors burst open. Detective Sarah Chen, a stern-faced woman in her 40s, entered with 3 officers behind her. She scanned the room until her eyes landed on their table. "Michael Davis," she called out, her voice carrying across the now silent ballroom. Michael felt his stomach drop. "That's me. Detective Chen, Hartford Police. We need to speak with you immediately." The entire wedding party was staring now. Michael's parents, Robert and Linda Davis, looked mortified. His mother clutched his father's arm, her face a mask of confusion and embarrassment. "What's this about?" Michael asked, his voice barely steady. "Sir, we need you to come with us for questioning regarding a federal investigation." "Federal investigation?" Tommy stepped forward, still in his wedding tuxedo. "There must be some mistake. My brother's an architect. He designs office buildings." Detective Chen's expression didn't change. "Mr. Davis, you can come willingly, or we can do this the hard way. Your choice." Michael looked at Emma, who was backing away from the table. Her face was ashen, and she wouldn't meet his eyes. "Emma?" he said quietly. "Emma, what did you do?" "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry, Michael." And then she ran. Emma bolted toward the emergency exit, her heels clicking against the marble floor. Detective Chen immediately radioed for backup as 2 officers gave chase. "Stop, police!" one of them shouted. But Emma was already through the emergency door, the alarm blaring as she disappeared into the Connecticut night. Michael stood frozen, watching his wife flee while his brother's wedding reception descended into chaos. Guests were pulling out phones, some trying to take pictures, others calling friends and family to share the unbelievable scene. "Michael Davis, you're under arrest," Detective Chen said, approaching with handcuffs. "You have the right to remain silent." As the Miranda rights were read, Michael's mind raced. What federal investigation? What had Emma done? And why had she run instead of staying to explain? Tommy grabbed his arm. "Mike, don't say anything without a lawyer. I'll call Dad's attorney right now." "The wedding," Michael said weakly. "I ruined your wedding." "Forget the wedding," Tommy said firmly. "We're going to figure this out." As Michael was led away in handcuffs, he caught sight of his parents' devastated faces. His mother was crying. His father looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. The happiest day of Tommy's life had become a nightmare. And somewhere in the darkness outside, Emma was running from secrets that were about to destroy everything they'd built together. The Hartford Police Department's interrogation room was exactly what Michael had seen in countless movies. Fluorescent lights, a metal table, uncomfortable plastic chairs, and a one-way mirror. He'd been sitting there for 3 hours, still in his wedding suit, trying to make sense of what had happened. Detective Chen entered with a thick manila folder and a cup of coffee. She was followed by Agent Robert Torres from the FBI, a tall man with graying temples who looked like he'd been working this case for months. "Mr. Davis," Detective Chen began, settling into the chair across from him, "let's start with what you know about your wife's business activities." "Her business activities? She runs an art gallery, the Meridian Gallery on Asylum Street. She sells paintings, sculptures, hosts exhibitions." "I don't understand what this has to do with—" "When did you last visit the gallery?" Agent Torres interrupted. Michael thought for a moment. "Last week. Emma was preparing for a new exhibition featuring local artists." "Why?" Agent Torres opened the folder and spread several photographs across the table. They showed the interior of Emma's gallery, but also what appeared to be a back room Michael had never seen. "Do you recognize this space?" Detective Chen asked. Michael studied the photos. One showed stacks of paintings wrapped in protective cloth. Another showed what looked like shipping crates. A third showed computer equipment and documents scattered across a desk. "I've never seen this room before," Michael said honestly. "Emma always said the back area was just storage." "Mr. Davis, your wife's gallery has been under FBI surveillance for 8 months, Agent Torres said. "We have evidence that she's been involved in an international art forgery and money laundering operation." The words hit Michael like a physical blow. "That's impossible. Emma would never—" "We have photographs, recorded conversations, financial records," Detective Chen continued. "The Meridian Gallery has been a front for moving stolen artwork and forged pieces worth millions of dollars." Agent Torres pulled out another set of photos. These showed Emma meeting with various individuals, some in expensive suits, others who looked decidedly less respectable. "Do you know any of these people?" he asked. Michael scanned the faces, recognizing none of them. "No, I've never seen any of these people before." "This man," Agent Torres pointed to a photo of Emma shaking hands with a heavy-set man in a black coat, "is Viktor Petrov. He's connected to a Russian organized crime syndicate that specializes in art theft and forgery." Michael felt sick. "This can't be real. Emma's not a criminal. She's my wife. We've been married for 5 years. I would know if she was involved in something like this." "Would you?" Detective Chen leaned forward. "When did you meet Emma?" 7 years ago at a coffee shop in downtown Hartford. She was reading a book about Renaissance art, and I struck up a conversation." "What did she tell you about her background?" Michael tried to remember. "She said she grew up in California, studied art history at UCLA. Her parents died in a car accident when she was in college. She moved to Connecticut for a fresh start." Agent Torres and Detective Chen exchanged glances. "Mr. Davis, there's no record of an Emma Collins, that was her maiden name, correct, ever attending UCLA. The social security number she used when you got your marriage license belongs to a woman who died in 1995. The room seemed to spin. "What are you saying?" "We're saying your wife isn't who she claims to be. Her real name is Elena Volkov, and she's been wanted by Interpol for 3 years in connection with art forgeries in London, Paris, and Rome." Michael put his head in his hands. "This is insane. You're telling me my entire marriage is a lie?" "We have reason to believe she married you to establish a legitimate identity in the United States," Detective Chen said. "Your clean record, your established career, your family connections, it was the perfect cover." "But she loves me," Michael said weakly. "I know she loves me." "Maybe she does," Agent Torres said, not unkindly. "But love doesn't change the fact that she's involved in serious federal crimes." They showed him more evidence. Bank records showing large cash deposits into accounts he'd never heard of, shipping records for artwork that had never appeared in the gallery's public inventory, and surveillance footage of Emma meeting with known criminals. "Why are you arresting me?" Michael asked. "If Emma's the criminal, why am I here?" "Because you're married to her. Because you have joint bank accounts. Because legally you're connected to everything she's done," Detective Chen explained. "But we believe you're innocent. We think you're a victim in this too." "Then why the handcuffs? Why the dramatic arrest at my brother's wedding?" Agent Torres leaned back in his chair. "Because we needed Emma to run. We've been trying to catch her and her associates for months, but she's been too careful. We were hoping that if we arrested you publicly, she'd make a mistake, lead us to the bigger fish. You used me as bait, Michael said, anger finally breaking through his shock. We're trying to catch international criminals, Mr. Davis. Your wife is part of a network that's stolen millions of dollars worth of artwork. We needed to force their hand. And now, what happens now? Now we find your wife and you're going to help us. Michael looked at the two investigators, then at the photos spread across the table. His entire life had been turned upside down in a matter of hours. The woman he'd loved and trusted had been living a lie and he'd been too blind to see it. What if I refuse to help? Then you'll probably go to prison as an accessory to federal crimes, Detective Chen said bluntly. We have evidence that suggests you benefited from her criminal activities, even if you didn't know about them. What kind of evidence? Agent Torres pulled out a bank statement. Your joint savings account shows deposits totaling $200,000 over the past 2 years. Can you explain where that money came from? Michael stared at the numbers. Emma said she was having a good year at the gallery. She said she'd sold several expensive pieces to private collectors. Those collectors don't exist, Mr. Davis. That money came from illegal activities. The reality of his situation was finally sinking in. Whether he'd known about Emma's crimes or not, he was legally implicated. His career, his reputation, his family's honor, everything was at risk. What do you want me to do? He asked quietly. Help us find her. Help us understand her network. Help us bring down the people she's been working with. Michael thought about Emma running through the country club parking lot, her beautiful dress torn, her face full of fear and guilt. Despite everything, he still loved her, but he also knew he had no choice. Okay, he said, I'll help you, but I want immunity, and I want protection for my family. We can arrange that, Agent Torres said. But first, you need to tell us everything you know about your wife's activities, and I mean everything. Michael took a deep breath and began to talk. 48 hours after the wedding disaster, Michael sat in an FBI safe house in an undisclosed location outside Hartford. The modest ranch-style home was surrounded by woods, with federal agents stationed discreetly around the property. He'd been allowed to call his family, but couldn't tell them where he was. Agent Torres entered the living room with a laptop and fresh coffee. We've had a breakthrough, he announced. Emma made contact. Michael looked up from the legal documents he'd been reviewing with his court-appointed attorney. She called? Better. She sent an encrypted message through a secure server. She wants to meet with you. Where? The Wadsworth Atheneum Museum of Art in downtown Hartford. Tomorrow at 2 p.m. She specified the European Art Wing. Michael's attorney, David Brennan, immediately objected. Absolutely not. It's obviously a trap. She could have accomplices, weapons, anything. We'll have the museum surrounded, Agent Torres assured him. Plainclothes officers throughout the building, sharpshooters on adjacent rooftops. Mr. Davis will be completely protected. And what if she doesn't show? What if this is just a diversion while she escapes the country? Then we're no worse off than we are now, Detective Chen said, joining them. But I don't think she'll run. Not yet. Why not? Michael asked. Because she left something behind, something important enough to risk capture. Detective Chen placed a small jewelry box on the coffee table. Inside was Emma's wedding ring, a simple platinum band with a small diamond that Michael had saved for months to buy. We found this in her car. She abandoned the vehicle about 10 miles from the country club and disappeared on foot. But she left this on the dashboard with a note. She handed Michael a small piece of paper with Emma's handwriting. For the only honest thing in my life, I'm sorry. E. Michael stared at the ring, remembering the day he'd proposed. They'd been hiking in the Berkshire Mountains, and he'd gotten down on one knee at a scenic overlook. Emma had cried with joy, or at least he'd thought it was joy. Now he wondered if those tears had been guilt. She's going to try to explain, he said quietly. She wants to tell me her side of the story. Are you prepared for that? Agent Torres asked. Are you prepared to hear that everything you believed about your relationship was a lie? Michael closed the jewelry box and slipped it into his pocket. I need to know the truth, all of it. The next day, Michael walked through the marble corridors of the Wadsworth Atheneum, one of America's oldest public art museums. He was wired for sound, with a nearly invisible microphone attached to his shirt and a tracking device in his jacket pocket. The European Art Wing was moderately crowded with afternoon visitors, tourists, art students, and retirees enjoying a cultural afternoon. Michael positioned himself in front of a Renaissance painting of the Madonna and Child, trying to look casual while his heart raced. At exactly 2 p.m., Emma appeared beside him. She looked completely different. Gone was the elegant socialite he'd married. Her dark hair was now blonde and cut short. She wore jeans, a plain black sweater, and sunglasses despite being indoors. But he recognized her immediately, the way she moved, the familiar scent of her perfume. "Hello, Michael," she said quietly, pretending to study the painting. "Emma." His voice was barely a whisper. "Or should I call you Elena?" She flinched. I know you're not who you said you were. I know about the forgeries, the money laundering, the connection to Russian organized crime. What I don't know is why." Elena was silent for a long moment. "Because I was 17 years old and desperate, and I made choices that I've been paying for ever since." 17? "My real name is Elena Volkov. I was born in Moscow. When I was 16, my father disappeared, probably killed for crossing the wrong people. My mother and I fled to London with nothing but the clothes on our backs." Michael listened, acutely aware of the FBI agents positioned around the museum. "I was good at art. I could copy anything, paintings, sculptures, even documents. A man named Dmitry Kozlov found me on the streets and offered me work. I thought I was just making copies for rich people who couldn't afford originals. But it was more than that, much more. By the time I realized I was involved in serious crime, it was too late. Dmitry owned me. He had evidence of everything I'd done, and he threatened to turn me over to the authorities if I tried to leave." They moved to another painting, a still life of flowers in a vase. Michael could see Agent Torres in his peripheral vision, pretending to read a museum brochure. "So, you came to America." "I escaped. 3 years ago, I managed to get away from Dmitry's organization and made it to the United States with a false identity. I just wanted to disappear, start over, be normal. And you met me." Elena turned to look at him for the first time, her eyes visible now that she'd removed her sunglasses. "Meeting you was the best thing that ever happened to me. You were kind, honest, genuine. Everything I'd never had in my life. But you were still running scams. I was trying to get out." Her voice rose slightly, drawing a glance from a nearby security guard. She lowered it again. "The gallery was supposed to be legitimate, but Dmitry found me. He threatened to expose everything unless I helped him move stolen artwork through the United States. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you ask for help?" "Because I loved you too much to destroy your life. You have a family, a career, a reputation. I couldn't drag you into my mess." Michael felt tears he'd been holding back finally start to fall. "But you did drag me into it. The FBI says I'm implicated in federal crimes. My family's reputation is destroyed. My brother's wedding is ruined." "I know. I'm so sorry, Michael. I tried to keep you separate from it, but it was impossible. When I heard the FBI was closing in, I panicked. I thought if I could get you away from the wedding, somehow I could protect you." "Protect me? You ran away and left me to face the consequences alone." "Because I knew if I stayed, they'd arrest both of us. This way, at least you have a chance to prove your innocence." Michael looked around the museum, at the paintings and sculptures created by artists centuries ago. Some were originals, some were copies, but all of them told stories of human experience, love, loss, betrayal, redemption. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now I disappear forever. I have new documents, new identity. I'll go somewhere far away where Dmitry can't find me. And me? You cooperate with the FBI. You tell them everything you know. You rebuild your life. What if I don't want to rebuild without you?" Elena touched his hand briefly. "You have to. You deserve better than a life on the run with a criminal." "Elena, the FBI is here. They're watching us right now." She smiled sadly. "I know. I counted at least 6 agents when I walked in." "Then why did you come?" "Because I needed to tell you the truth. Because I needed you to know that everything I felt for you was real, even if everything else was a lie." Michael looked into her eyes, seeing the woman he'd fallen in love with beneath the fear and deception. "Come with me. Surrender to the FBI. Testify against Dmitry and his organization. We can work through this together. They'll put me in prison for 20 years. Maybe, or maybe they'll give you a deal if you help them catch the bigger criminals." Elena shook her head. "You don't understand. These people don't just disappear when you testify against them. They find you, and they make you pay. Then what's the alternative? Running forever. It's better than being dead." Suddenly, Elena tensed. "We need to go now." "What?" "Look at the entrance. 2 men in black coats just walked in. They're not FBI." Michael turned to see the men Elena was referring to. They were scanning the crowd methodically, and one of them looked familiar from the surveillance photos Agent Torres had shown him. "Dmitry's men," Elena whispered. "They found me." The next few seconds seemed to happen in slow motion. Elena grabbed Michael's hand and pulled him toward the emergency exit. The FBI agents in the museum immediately moved to intercept, but the two men in black coats were faster. Gunshots rang out in the pristine marble halls of the Wadsworth Athenaeum. The sound of gunfire in the museum sent visitors into panic. Michael found himself being dragged through a maze of corridors by Elena, who seemed to know the building's layout better than the FBI agents pursuing them. "This way!" she shouted over the screams and alarms. They burst through an emergency exit into the museum's loading dock area. A maintenance worker dove for cover as more shots rang out behind them. Agent Torres's voice echoed from the museum's PA system, trying to evacuate civilians. "Elena, stop running!" Michael pleaded as they reached the parking area. "Let the FBI handle this." "The FBI can't protect us from Dimitri's men," she replied, pulling him toward a motorcycle parked behind a delivery truck. "They'll kill us both just to send a message." "Where did you get a motorcycle?" "I've been planning for this day for 3 years." Elena kicked the bike to life, and Michael reluctantly climbed on behind her. As they sped out of the parking lot, he could see FBI vehicles converging on the museum from all directions. They weaved through Hartford's downtown traffic, Elena driving with a skill that suggested this wasn't her first high-speed escape. Michael's mind raced as he tried to process what had happened. The men in black coats had been willing to shoot up a public museum to get to Elena. What kind of people was she involved with? "Where are we going?" he shouted over the engine noise. "Somewhere safe, I hope." They drove for 20 minutes, leaving the city behind and heading into the Connecticut countryside. Elena finally stopped at what appeared to be an abandoned farmhouse, surrounded by overgrown fields. "What is this place?" Michael asked as they dismounted. "A safe house. I've been keeping it ready just in case." The farmhouse was small but well maintained inside. Elena had stocked it with supplies, food, water, first aid kit, and what looked like enough cash to last for months. "You've been planning to run for a long time," Michael observed. "I've been planning to survive," Elena corrected. "There's a difference." She moved to a window and peered through the curtains. "We should be safe here for a few hours, but not much longer. Dimitri's people are persistent." Michael sat down heavily on an old couch. "Elena, I can't live like this. I can't spend my life running from criminals." "I know. That's why you're going back." "What do you mean?" Elena opened a small safe hidden behind a painting on the wall. She pulled out a thick envelope and handed it to him. "What's this?" "Everything. Names, addresses, bank account numbers, shipping records, photographs. Everything the FBI needs to bring down Dimitri's entire network." Michael opened the envelope and saw hundreds of documents, photographs, and what appeared to be financial records. "You've been collecting evidence?" "For over a year. I knew this day would come, and I wanted to be ready." "Why didn't you give this to the FBI sooner?" "Because I needed leverage. As long as I had this information, I had value. The moment I handed it over, I became expendable." Michael studied the documents. Even with his limited knowledge of criminal investigations, he could see that this was a treasure trove of information. This could put dozens of people in prison, including me. Maybe, or maybe it could save you. Elena sat down beside him. "Michael, I need you to take this evidence back to the FBI. Tell them I'm willing to testify against Dimitri and his organization in exchange for witness protection. Come with me. We'll turn ourselves in together." "I can't. Not yet. Dimitri still has people inside law enforcement. If I surrender now, I might not live to testify." Michael looked at the woman he'd married, seeing her clearly for perhaps the first time. She was tougher than he'd ever imagined, more resourceful, but also more frightened. "How do I know you won't disappear the moment I leave?" "Because I love you, and because I'm tired of running." Elena pulled out a cell phone. "I'll call you every day at exactly 6 p.m. If you don't hear from me, assume I'm dead and give the FBI everything." "Elena, promise me, Michael, promise me you'll do this." Before he could answer, the sound of approaching vehicles cut through the afternoon air. Elena was at the window immediately. "Shit, they found us." "How?" "Doesn't matter. We need to go, now." She grabbed a backpack from the closet and started stuffing it with supplies. "There's a path through the woods behind the house. It leads to a road about 2 miles east. Can you make it?" "What about you?" "I'll slow them down, then catch up." Michael grabbed her arm. "I'm not leaving you." "Yes, you are. Because if they catch both of us, no one will be left to stop them." The sound of car doors slamming came from the front of the house. Elena looked out the window and cursed in what Michael assumed was Russian. "How many?" he asked. 4, maybe 5, all armed." She handed him the backpack and the envelope of evidence. "Go, now, don't look back." "Elena, go!" Michael reluctantly headed for the back door, but stopped when he heard Elena's voice behind him. "Michael," he turned back, "I meant what I said at the museum. Everything I felt for you was real. The sound of the front door being kicked in made the decision for him. Michael ran into the woods, clutching the evidence that could bring down an international criminal organization. Behind him, he heard shouting in multiple languages, then gunshots. He ran faster, crashing through underbrush and jumping over fallen logs. The path Elena had mentioned was barely visible, but he followed it deeper into the Connecticut wilderness. After what felt like hours, but was probably only 30 minutes, he reached the road. A passing truck driver, seeing his disheveled appearance, stopped and offered him a ride to the nearest town. At a gas station, Michael used a payphone to call Agent Torres. "Torres, it's Michael Davis. I need immediate pickup. And I have something you're going to want to see." "Where are you?" Michael gave him the location. "Agent Torres, Elena had evidence. A lot of evidence. But there were shots fired at the farmhouse. I don't know if she's alive. We'll find her, Michael. Just stay where you are." As Michael waited for the FBI to arrive, he thought about Elena's promise to call him every day at 6 p.m. He looked at his watch, 5:47 p.m. He'd never wanted to receive a phone call more in his life. 3 weeks later, Michael sat in a federal courthouse in New Haven, Connecticut, preparing to testify before a grand jury. The evidence Elena had given him had been a goldmine for federal investigators, leading to arrests across 3 states and 2 countries. Agent Torres found him in the witness preparation room, reviewing his testimony one final time. "How are you holding up?" Torres asked. "Better than I expected," Michael replied honestly. "Any word on Elena?" Torres's expression grew serious. "We found blood at the farmhouse, but no body. There were signs of a struggle, but also evidence that someone escaped through a basement tunnel we didn't know existed, so she might be alive. It's possible, but Michael, you need to prepare yourself for the possibility that she's not." Michael nodded. He'd been preparing for that possibility every day since he'd run into the woods. The daily 6 p.m. phone calls had never come. "The grand jury is ready for you," Torres announced. The testimony took 4 hours. Michael recounted everything: meeting Elena, their marriage, the gradual discoveries about her true identity, and finally the events at the museum and farmhouse. He turned over the evidence she'd given him and answered dozens of questions from prosecutors and grand jurors. When it was over, U.S. Attorney Patricia Williams approached him in the hallway. "Mr. Davis, I want you to know that your cooperation has been invaluable. We've been able to dismantle a major international criminal organization. What happens now?" "The grand jury will issue indictments. We'll arrest the remaining members of Dimitri's network, and you'll be placed in witness protection until the trials are complete." "For how long?" "Could be months, could be years. These cases are complex." Michael thought about his life before Emma, his architecture firm, his family, his simple routines. All of that seemed like a lifetime ago. "What about my brother's wedding?" he asked. "I never got to properly apologize." "Your family understands. They're proud of you for doing the right thing." That evening, Michael sat in his temporary apartment in an undisclosed location, watching the news coverage of the arrests. The reporter stood outside the Meridian Gallery, which had been sealed off as a crime scene. "Federal agents have arrested 12 individuals in connection with an international art forgery and money laundering scheme," the reporter announced. The mastermind, identified as Dmitry Kozlov, was apprehended in New York City attempting to flee the country. Michael turned off the television and walked to the window. The apartment overlooked a small park where children were playing on swings while their parents watched from benches. It was a normal scene of American life, the kind of normalcy he'd taken for granted before Emma entered his world. His phone rang. The caller ID showed unknown number. "Hello? Michael?" His heart stopped. "Elena? I'm alive. Barely, but alive. Where are you? Are you safe?" "Safe is relative. I'm in a hospital in Montreal. Dimitri's men shot me, but I managed to get across the border before I collapsed. Are you okay?" "I'll live." "Michael, I saw the news. Dimitri's been arrested." "Yes, along with most of his network. The evidence you gave me was incredible." "Good. That's what I hoped would happen." Michael closed his eyes, relief washing over him. "Elena, the FBI can protect you now. Dimitri's in custody. His organization is finished. You can come home." "Can I? Do you want me to?" The question hung in the air between them. Michael thought about everything they'd been through, the lies, the danger, the destruction of his old life. But he also thought about the woman who'd given him evidence to bring down criminals, who'd risked her life to protect him. "Yes," he said finally, "I want you to come home. Even knowing who I really am, even knowing what I've done, I fell in love with you, Elena, not the fake identity you created, but you. The real you. The real me is complicated. I'm learning to like complicated. Eleanor was quiet for a moment. It won't be easy. There will be trials, testimony, media attention, and I'll probably have to spend some time in prison. We'll deal with it together. Michael? Yeah? I love you. The real you. Not the cover identity I needed, but the man who chose to risk everything to do the right thing. I love you too. I'll call Agent Torres tomorrow, set up a surrender. Eleanor, one more thing. What? When you get out of prison, will you marry me again, a real wedding this time with our real names? Eleanor laughed, and it was the most beautiful sound Michael had heard in weeks. Yes, but this time I'm planning the guest list. 18 months later, Michael stood at the altar of a small chapel in Vermont, wearing a simple black suit and trying not to fidget with his tie. The venue was intimate, just family and close friends with tight security provided by the U.S. Marshals Service. Elena had spent 8 months in minimum security prison after pleading guilty to art fraud charges. Her cooperation with federal prosecutors had earned her a reduced sentence, and she'd been released to a halfway house 3 months ago. The Witness Protection Program had given them new identities and a fresh start in a small town where nobody knew their story. Tommy, still his best man despite everything, leaned over and whispered, "You sure about this, Mike?" "Never been more sure of anything," Michael replied. The chapel doors opened, and Elena walked down the aisle. She wore a simple white dress and carried a small bouquet of wildflowers. Her hair was its natural dark brown color, and she'd never looked more beautiful. But it wasn't just her appearance that had changed. Prison and therapy had given her a confidence she'd never had before. She was no longer running from her past. She owned it, learned from it, and chosen to build something better. As she reached the altar, Michael took her hands. "Ready for this?" he asked quietly. "Ready for anything, as long as it's with you." The ceremony was officiated by a retired judge who'd been briefed on their unusual circumstances. When it came time for the vows, Eleanor spoke first. "Michael, when I first met you, I was pretending to be someone else. I thought I needed to be perfect, to have a perfect past, to deserve love. You taught me that love isn't about perfection. It's about choosing to build something real together, even when it's difficult." She paused, looking out at the small group of family and friends. "I made terrible choices that hurt people I cared about, but with your help, I've learned to make better choices. I promise to be honest with you, to trust you with my fears and my dreams, and to never run away from problems we can face together." Michael's voice was thick with emotion as he began his own vows. "Elena, you've shown me that love isn't about having an easy life. It's about having someone worth fighting for. You've made me braver, more compassionate, and more aware of how complex the world really is." He smiled at her. "I promise to support you as you continue rebuilding your life. I promise to be patient when the past catches up to us, and I promise to never let you face anything alone again." The judge pronounced them husband and wife, and Michael kissed Elena as their small group of guests applauded. It was nothing like the grand wedding reception that had been interrupted by police sirens 18 months ago, but it was perfect in its simplicity and honesty. At the reception in the chapel's adjoining hall, Michael's parents approached them. His mother, Linda, embraced Elena warmly. "Welcome to the family, dear, for real this time." "Thank you, Mrs. Davis. I know this hasn't been easy for you. Call me Linda. And you're right, it hasn't been easy. But Michael loves you, and that's enough for us." Tommy raised his glass for a toast. "To Michael and Elena, may your second beginning be everything your first one couldn't be." As evening fell, Michael and Elena walked out to a small garden behind the chapel. The summer air was warm, and fireflies were beginning to appear among the trees. "Any regrets?" Elena asked. Michael considered the question. His architecture firm was gone. His reputation had been rebuilt from scratch, and he'd spent months in witness protection. But he was married to a woman who'd risked everything to protect him, and they'd both emerged stronger from their ordeal. "No regrets," he said. "What about you?" "Just one." "What's that?" Elena smiled. "I regret that it took me so long to trust you with the truth. We have plenty of time to make up for that." They stood together in the garden, watching the stars appear in the Vermont sky. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell chimed the hour. It was a peaceful sound, marking time in a life that had finally found its rhythm. "What happens now?" Eleanor asked. "Now we go home. We start our new life. We take it one day at a time. And if the past catches up to us again," Michael took her hand, "then we face it together." As they walked back toward the chapel, Michael thought about the night at Tommy's wedding when everything had changed. At the time, it had felt like the end of the world. Now he understood it had been the beginning of something much more honest and real. Elena had been right to insist they leave the reception that night. She'd been protecting him in the only way she knew how, even though it meant sacrificing herself. That kind of love, complicated, imperfect, but utterly genuine, was worth fighting for. The chapel doors closed behind them, and Michael and Elena Davis began their new life together, built on a foundation of truth, forgiveness, and the hard-won knowledge that love isn't about perfection. It's about choosing each other, again and again, no matter what the world throws